Well, I think it reminds us straight away of all of the fraud that the current Prime Minister presided over when he was Chancellor. You know, the £12 billion in dodgy contract, in fraud and COVID fraud and all the dodgy contracts and so on. And I think what this reminds us of is that when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, he stood on the steps of Downing Street talking about, I think, professionalism, accountability, integrity. And yet we see more stories of people in the Conservative Party involved in stories like this. I think it really damages trust in politics, and it should be a wake-up call to Rishi Sunak to get on top of this.
But is it reasonable to criticise Michael Gove? Because, you know, all he did was he was approached, we were right in the middle of the pandemic, and he just passed on the email.
Well, I think we need to find out what happened, but I think that there is a whole set of questions around COVID fraud and waste, which hang around the Prime Minister, and really the buck has to stop with him, so he has to get on top of this, and we need to know what happened.
OK. What do you make of suggestions from the Levelling Up and Housing Secretary this morning that actually the organisation in Rochdale and others as well will have money removed from them until they get their act together?
I think it's right to take firm action against social housing providers, against social landlords who are not looking after their tenants. What happened in Rochdale was heartbreaking, shocking. It should be a wake-up call to government to do something about making sure that social housing landlords aren't allowed to get away with this. So I think that's right. I think that what I would add to it is that there's another problem in housing alongside what's happening in the social sector, which is what's happening in the private rented sector as well, where there's also very bad conditions in a lot of cases. And one of the real issues with the private rented sector is that because the regulation is so weak, tenants can't complain. Because if you complain in the private rented sector, you can get evicted. And so actually there's a whole bit of work that needs to be done, a really urgent, a long overdue piece of work that needs to be done about strengthening protections of private tenants as well.
Yeah, but I want to take you back to the point that the government wants to take money off these social housing organisations. How is that going to help them get better if they've got less money to do it with?
So my understanding of the announcement is this relates to the investment in new build. And I suppose there's this good argument, which is that if you can't look after your current properties and make sure your current tenants are well served by a landlord, should you really be building new homes?
Yes, so that you can get them out of those bad quality accommodation and put them in a new one.
Well, I think there's no excuse for bad landlords. And I think although social landlords play a really crucial role in terms of building new social housing, that can't be an excuse to let them get away with treating tenants badly.
But taking money off them, how does that help?
Well, that's money for new build, as I understand it.
Yeah, and as I say, by building new properties, then you can get them out of the stuff that isn't fit for purpose.
I think it's really important to make sure that the current homes that the social landlords own and manage are decent quality. I think saying that if we can build new homes, we can just leave the old homes in the state they are is not a tenable situation. You know, we have to build new council housing, new social housing, but we absolutely have to make sure that the current social housing we have in the country is up to standard. And we saw the absolutely devastating impact when that is not the case.
Do you support the government's energy saving campaign that they are saying that we need to save 15% of energy, not necessarily because of the cost, also because of the cost, but you know, we don't know where we're getting our energy from?
Well, I think it's absolutely right to make sure that we're not wasting energy, particularly at the moment.
What do you do to save energy at home?
What do I do to save energy? Well, we make sure we keep our heating on as little as possible. It's been quite late in the year that we first turned our heating on. We just had a discussion at home the other day about let's not put the heating on today, let's make sure we're putting jumpers on first, because I think it's in all of our minds about making sure that we don't overspend. And, you know, I'm in a position where I don't have to worry about paying my energy bills, but I know that people across the country are worried about paying their energy bills, and that's why we need to make sure we have that support in place for people through the months ahead, but also in the long run. You know, we're very focused, rightly so, on getting people through the winter and the months ahead, but actually what the government should be doing at the same time is investing in that insulation of properties, investing in new, renewable, homegrown energy sources to make sure that we can bring bills down and have more stable energy supplies in the future.
What temperature do you have your heating on at home?
I think it's about 20.
Quite high, that, isn't it?
Quite high, sure.
It's a bit high.
I'll have to look at that. I'll look at that when I get home tonight.
I think I'm... Apparently 17 is what...
It's 17?
Yeah.
Right, goodness me. OK, well...
You need to put another sweater on, I think. Have you been watching the football?
I must admit I haven't this week, because I think the first game on Monday was during a meeting we had in the Shadow Treasury team, so I wasn't watching that. although I did notice some of my staff members had a little window open on their screen.
Good for them. How do you feel about the Glazers potentially selling Manchester United? And it could, of course, go to a Saudi buyer.
Well, from what I picked up on what Man U fans have been saying, some of them are quite keen for this to happen in terms of the sale. I mean, I think, there's lots of different
You'd be comfortable
owners.
as Labour if it was sold to the Saudis?
Well, there's lots of different ownerships involved in football and different clubs. I think there's a bigger picture here about the social responsibility that's connected with football, and we've seen that, really starkly in terms of what's happening in Qatar. The role of the England players, England fans, LGBT plus England fans being anxious perhaps about going to Qatar. I think actually, as a gay man myself, when I heard the Foreign Secretary say words to the effect of act less gay if you're going out to watch football, I was pretty appalled by that, to be honest, because I thought it should be his job to make sure that LGBT plus England and Wales fans can go out there and enjoy the game.